Howdy folks, hope you're all having a good one, and welcome back to Sea Power, Naval Combat and the Missile Age. Today we're in command of a very small NATO convoy consisting of a pair of frigates escorting 2 merchantmen en route to Narvik in order to resupply NATO land forces following a Soviet invasion. The mission will be deemed a success if at least one of the 2 transports gets through. So, forces at our disposal. Well, we have the always reliable Oliver Hazard Perry class anti-submarine warfare frigate, the USS Samuel B. Roberts, namesake of the original USS Samuel B. Roberts, which I hope requires no introduction, although I'm going to give it one anyway. A legendary destroyer escort from World War II. Destroyer escort, by the way, is a fancy way of saying corvette. Right, a very, very small ship that during the Battle of the Philippines went up against the Japanese center force, which included ships like the Yamato. It did not survive the battle, but it did buy time for the task force that it was escorting to get out of there with minimal losses. The Sammy B here is launching a helicopter. I'm going to want to get some sonar buoys laid ahead of the force because I have no idea what the threat is that I'm going to be facing today. It could be a surface threat, it could be an air threat, it could be a subsurface threat, it could be all 3. I have absolutely no idea. We'll talk about threat briefings in a moment because they're actually kind of important, but for now we're going to get this helo airborne. We are streaming the towed array sonar because there could be submarines out there. It's the Russians, there probably are. And we're going to attempt to get some idea of exactly what it is that we're facing. In reality, if you're on operation like this, you would have a daily threat briefing. In the Royal Navy, it's the responsibility of the electronic warfare operators to brief the command on exactly what kind of threat you're facing. And that is determined by the capabilities of the opposition. Like, for example, during the Falklands War in 1982, the threat to the warships operating in San Carlos water was an air threat. There was no surface threat, there was no submarine threat, but we knew that the Argentine Air Force could reach us with their A4 Skyhawks and Mirage fighter bombers. And we knew that the weapons that they would be able to deploy within the confines of San Carlos water were limited to bombs and rockets, although it was still a significant threat because, well, those A4 Skyhawk pilots in particular were really, really good. Outside of San Carlos waters, around the Falklands in general, the threat was a bit more significant. There was very, very little submarine threat or surface threat, but again, the air threat was slightly more worrying because this time we knew that they had Exocet air-to-surface missiles. And in the open ocean, they had space to use them, and they did. Here, well, there is no threat briefing, but, well, the Soviets have just invaded Norway, so it's extremely likely that they will have captured some Norwegian air bases from which to stage air attacks. So there's probably an air threat. And it's probably not just going to be bombs and rockets. They're going to have air-to-surface missiles. There's almost certainly a subsurface threat, because they're the Russians and they do like their submarines, and their submarines were pretty good, as were their crews. There may also be a surface threat. And if I had the vaguest idea of the kind of surface units that I'm likely to be facing, I'd know what threat they posed, I'd know what weapons they were equipped with, so I'd be able to adapt my defensive posture accordingly. Unfortunately, I don't know shit, so I basically just have to assume the worst. So I'm deploying the Sammy B's helo to lay this pattern of sonar buoys to the east of the horse, and I've also deployed the USS Moinister's helo to do the same thing but ahead of the force. It's important to try to get as much separation between the various different patterns of sonar buoys that we're dropping as possible, because if one sonar buoy picks up a passive contact, if it hears something out there, the only thing that one sonar buoy can tell you is basically it's in that direction. You get a bearing, but you have no idea of distance. On the other hand, if a second sonar buoy in a different location, as far away as possible from the first preferably, also picks up the same contact, you can cross those 2 lines of bearing and suddenly you've got a range as well. You've got a much, much better idea of exactly where that sound source is. You can still get some decent information from a single passive sonar buoy contact though. You can usually estimate with a fairly high degree of accuracy what kind of speed the contact's doing. You can usually tell how many blades it has in the propellers that are churning through the water. You can usually tell how many propeller shafts it has. Generally speaking, merchantmen, fishing boats, trawlers, small freighters, they only have 3 or 4 bladed propellers and they only have a single shaft. So if something has a 5 or 7 bladed propeller and it's running on 2 shafts and it's doing 39 knots, it's probably not a fishing boat. That would probably be enough to classify it as a hostile contact, as long as you know there are no friendlies in that location, and you would know if there were any friendlies in that location. Still, while there is a fair amount of information that you can get from a single passive contact, it's always better to get multiple points of contact on the same signal source. Which is why we're launching 2 sets of helicopters. We are also under very, very tight emission control today. We are radiating nothing. No active sonar, no surface search radar, no air search radar. We're basically relying on the sonar buoys at the moment. Although both frigates do also have towed array sonar, with the Sammy B deploying their towed array below the layer, and the Moinister deploying its towed array above the layer. I should probably explain exactly what that means, although I'm sure that plenty of you out there know exactly what the thermal layer is. Basically, the ocean consists of various different, I suppose you could call them temperature bands. We tend to have the warmer water at the surface, down to a couple of 100 feet, and then it suddenly gets very cold very fast. This is what we call the thermal layer. Now the depth of the layer varies, it's not always at the same depth. What will tend to happen is, if for example you're banging away on active sonar, it's fine until it hits that thermal layer, and the thermal layer can actually reflect the sound waves, so your active sonar can find it difficult to penetrate below the thermal layer. It also makes it very difficult for sound from below the thermal layer to penetrate above the thermal layer. So if a submarine's cruising along below the layer and you're listening out on your passive sonar, you might not hear it. Unless of course you've got a towed array sonar deployed below the thermal layer. So I'm trying to basically cover both bases here. I'm also not radiating on any of my radars, not my air search, not my surface search, and I'm not doing that for the same reason that you wouldn't be banging away on active sonar trying to detect a submarine that you don't even know is out there in the first place. You don't do that with your sonar because they will hear your sonar long before your sonar will get a ping from them, and that will give them a definite bearing back to you, and also we won't give them a definite range, but I mean, you know, they know exactly what kind of sonar sets you're operating and the kind of power output that they have, and it is not quite as simple as that underwater, but for the purposes of this video it will give them a reasonable estimation of your range as well. Now above the water, using radar, it is more or less that simple, because they will recognize the radar signature, they will know what kind of radar is emitting it, they will know what kind of ships have that radar, they will also know exactly what kind of power that radar is capable of emitting, which will give them, based on the signal strength that they're picking up, a reasonable estimation not only of exactly what bearing you're on, but more or less how far away you are too. And all they have to do then is send something to investigate along that line of bearing, and they're going to find you. Now that doesn't mean you can't use your radar at all. You can use it intermittently. Now, if I had a slightly larger force than just 2 escorts, that's more or less exactly what I'd be doing. I'd pick my ships with the best surface-to-air missile defences, which probably also means they'd have the best air search radars, designate them as radar pickets, and then in the formation editor, you'd send them right to the extreme edge of the formation, like at least 20 kilometers away from the center of the force. And then every now and then they just turn their radars on. Now if there's anything listening out for that, particularly anything airborne, they can actually detect that from a good old distance away. But because you're only broadcasting intermittently, you're not really transmitting for long enough for them to get anything other than somebody just turned a radar on, like over there somewhere. And the amount of information that somebody could pick up from that would be very, very limited. They'd be able to tell what radar band you were transmitting on, although that by itself can often be enough. I mean, they'd know it wasn't navigational radar because it transmits on a different band. And also, nobody turns their navigational radar on for a couple of seconds and then very quickly turns it off again. So, yeah. What can I say? It's a game of cat and mouse. There are advantages and disadvantages to everything that you do. So while ideally I'd be taking my ship with the best surface-to-air missiles, in this case the USS Samuel B. Roberts, the Oliver Hazard Perry-class frigate, and send that out as a radar picket, I can't really do that because that will leave the 2 merchantmen undefended. It is my best air defence unit, and so it has to stay close enough to be able to defend the 2 merchantmen. But I can do something similar with my helicopters. So once they've laid this pattern of sonar, boys, that's more or less exactly what I'm going to do. This guy looks about done. Hang on, where is he? The helo launched from the Moinister. There you are. Now, the Sea Sprite doesn't have an air search radar, but it does have a surface search radar. Now, best case scenario, if there is a surface threat out there, it might be able to detect them. Even better, it might be able to classify them. So I'm going to need to get some altitude to give the surface search radar the best possible range. We're sending this helicopter up to 6,000 feet. And then we're moving him a good old distance away from the force, because the second he turns that radar on, somebody is probably going to notice. And, oh, hang on a second. We have a passive sonar contact. The sonar boys have got a hit. What's this? Okay, I'll pause the game here and let's investigate exactly what we have detected. So, well, based on the passive sonar information, that could be absolutely anything. However, based on its speed, 38 knots, it's not a fishing boat, is it? It's also heading straight towards us. I think we've been made. Again, I know very, very little about that passive sonar contact other than it has a single propeller shaft and a 3-bladed propeller. But it's doing 38 knots, so it's not a frigate, it's not a destroyer, it's not a cruiser. Oh, whoa, 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 hang on. We'll pursue that line of thought in a moment. The helicopter has just spotted a MiG-23 visually. Okay, what's that thing armed with? Dunno. This is where the daily threat briefing would have come in useful. What's that thing armed with? Is it bombs? Is it rockets? Is it missiles? I haven't got a clue. It kind of looked like missiles, so there's now no longer absolutely any point at all in maintaining the mission control. So, they know we're here, radars on. And you do have to actually turn your radars on when you're defending yourself, by the way, because, I mean, the Sammy B has a decent surface-to-air missile system, the SM-1. But it can't get a lock on the target until you turn the radar on. So when you're under attack, don't sit there waiting for your ships to defend themselves. You need to turn the radar on. At the moment we're weapons tight, which means that it will engage anything positively identified as hostile. And there we go. There's another launch. It's intercepted 1 MiG-23. Oh crap, I just accidentally told the ship to change course. Well, yeah, while I'm sorting that out, it's getting another missile away. Okay, he's gotten both. Right. Let's secure the radar. Oh, hang on. No, let's not. What's that? Contact just faded because I turned the radar off. Don't know exactly what that was, but it was doing 604 knots, so it's probably not an Airbus. Right, radar's back on. And let's re-engage. You know, at this point, there's not really a lot of point in securing the radar after each engagement because we've been well and truly made. Okay, I'm going to classify these as hostile. So the force should defend itself. Sammy B is turning to engage. Where's the other one? There it is. Okay, you're classed as hostile as well. And off you go. It's going to be the Sammy B doing most of the work here because it's equipped with the SM-1MR. This is the standard missile. It's not bad. Very reliable, and it has a range of nearly 25 nautical miles. It's a medium-range surface-to-air missile launcher. It's a semi-active radar homer. It's not fire and forget. It's not like the AMRAAM, for example. You must keep your radar switched on to guide the missile toward the target. Sometimes they call these things beam riders, because that's more or less exactly what they do. They ride your ship's radar beam towards the target, so if your ship's radar isn't turned on, it's not going to hit anything. Come on, boys. 2 more MiG-23s. At least I assume they're 2 more MiG-23s. And that one missed. No, I'm not too sure about this. I've just been going on about that one detonating after missing that one missed. I've just been going on about how reliable the SM-1 missile system is. It's just missed twice. Come on. We're going to need to fire another one. I mean, we've got plenty. Okay. One, and it did look like a MiG-23 shot down. You see, unfortunately, the Moinisters missiles are the less good Sea Sparrows, which only have a 10 nautical mile range. So he's way too far away to help out here. Okay, we got the other one. Alright, and we can secure from air red. And I think you can probably turn your surface search radar on. Good spot there, by the way. He visually spotted that first pair of incoming MiG-23s. So the plan was to send this guy over here up to 6,000 feet. I'm designating these as hostile, by the way, because they're coming right at me at 39 knots, so yeah. They're not pleasure cruisers. But yeah, the plan was to send this guy away, 6,000 feet, turn his radars on, a good 30-40 kilometres away from the force, and then just see what came to investigate. But we kind of got overtaken by events. So, anyway, first wave of attack defeated. Still don't know exactly what the MiG-23s were carrying. Like I said, if this was real, I would have had an operational threat briefing. I would have known exactly what the MiG-23s could have been armed with. It did look like missiles, but I don't know what kind. And therefore I didn't know the range, but we splashed them before they got within launch range, so it's all good. These little buggers, however, they worry me. We know that there's some kind of fast attack craft, based on their speed and heading. So on the one hand, yay, we're not facing Slava-class missile cruisers or anything like that. But, well, just because they're only fast attack craft, that's not necessarily good news. Because if there's one thing that the Russian Navy were pretty famous for, and in fact you could tell just by looking, even their aircraft carriers, right, were absolutely covered in extremely dangerous, long-range and hard-hitting missile launchers. And that includes their fast attack craft. They might just be little buggers, but I guarantee you they punch way above their weight class. So what exactly do I know about these things? Let's take a closer look. Okay, 4-bladed propeller, triple shaft. Yep, it's military. And of the possible options, none of them are good. Although some of those options are considerably less good than others. If it's a Scherchen, a Libelle, or a Stenker, I'm actually kind of happy, because those are just motor torpedo boats. Oh, hang on a second, Sonar Boys just picked something up, and it's at a depth of 255 feet, so again, it's probably not a fishing boat. We have a Soviet submarine. Well, it's... I don't know exactly where it is. All I have is a line of bearing, so I'm going to want to drop fresh Sonar Boys to narrow that datum down. And I've probably got time, because submarines aren't that fast, so we'll divert a helicopter to go and investigate that. But for the moment, because they're closing in substantially faster and they could have much longer range weapons than a submarine, how about those surface contacts? So based on what I know from sonar and radar, they're either a Libelle, a Stenker, a Scherchen, or a Nanuchka. Now, if they're anything other than a Nanuchka, it's not that bad, because Scherchens, Stenkers and Libelles are all classes of Soviet motor torpedo boats. Which means that providing I can maintain radar contact on them, I can take them out long before they get to within torpedo launch range. But I'm probably not that lucky, because if they're Nanuchkas, I could be in some trouble. Because a Nanuchka is not just a torpedo boat, it's a corvette, and it's substantially more capable and better armed. This is a Nanuchka. You see those really big tubes mounted on the sides? Those are SSN-9 surface-to-surface anti-shipping missiles. And each Nanuchka, and there are 2 of them out there, carries 6. It's not all bad news though, because the SSN-9 is subsonic, which means I have a better chance of intercepting it with my SM-1s, and it also only has a 59 nautical mile range, which means I can intercept them with my harpoons before they get into missile launch range. I just have to maintain radar contact on them. It's going to be a while before we get to within engagement distance of those 2 Nanuchkas though, so in the meantime I'm sending one of the sea sprites out to lay a sonar buoy pattern down here and hopefully triangulate and get a better resolution on that submarine datum. Just accelerating time here a little bit until we get the first set of sonar buoys away. With oh, contact faded. Well, that's not good. That's not good at all. Well, there's not a lot I can do about that other than continuing to do what I'm doing and just deploy these sonar buoys and hope I get lucky. I mean, the contact was about, again, it's difficult to say because I didn't really have a precise location, but it was about anything between 50 and 80 nautical miles away, so I do still have time. So we'll go ahead. Let's get a sonar buoy right in the middle of its last known location. Hope we can reacquire that contact. It doesn't take too long. Yep, there it is. And sonar have confirmed it is the same contact. And we've got a much better datum here. So you are definitely hostile. With a depth of 255 feet. I think it's above the layer. So we are going to close in and start dropping Mark 46 torpedoes on top of whatever the hell that is. Definitely hostile. Still not quite sure what it is. It could be an Alpha, it could be a Victor 1 or a Victor 2. Either way, it's hostile. Let's just check how far away those Nanuchkas are. My harpoon has a 65 nautical mile range, so they're still well outside of engagement range. Okay, the red circle that you just saw there on the tactical display, that was the maximum range of the harpoon. This guy's closing in. He's going to drop a Mark 46 on top of that contact. Based on what I know about it, I mean, aside from the fact that it is definitely a hostile submarine, it's either an Alpha, a Victor 1 or a Victor 2. None of those options are particularly good. I mean, it could be a Los Angeles. Pretty sure it isn't. It's more than likely an Alpha or a Victor. There we go, weapon deployed. I'm going to drop down at 20 feet now and then try to overfly that contact to see if I can pick it up with the magnet anomaly detector. There we go, see it streaming now that I've come down to altitude. The other sea sprite is busy. It's still hovering around at 6,000 feet with its surface search radar on, maintaining contact on those 2 Nanuchkas. But this guy's got some work to do. Off you go. Just adjust his course. See if we can refine the position of that thing. He's about to overfly it, and yep, we now have a precise fix. The Mark 46 is homing in. Let's see. Yep, it's a Victor. Either a Victor 1 or a Victor 2, so not an Alpha. So it can't outrun the torpedo. Well, I mean, even an Alpha can't outrun the torpedo, but given enough of a head start, it could certainly stay ahead of it long enough. The Victor, not so much. Mark 46 has gone pitbull, pinging away an active sonar. Not seeing anything, it's got to be right on top of it. Also not hearing any noisemakers yet. Oh, we have a hit. We have a hit. Not necessarily a kill though. Remember, airdrop torpedoes, out of necessity, there's a limit to the size of a weapon that you can actually carry on something like a helicopter. So the Sea Sprite carries 2 Mark 46s and the explosive warhead is less than 100 pounds. So it's probably going to require another attack. There we go. Hope it's not going to need more than 2, because if it does, I'm going to have to get another helo out here. I mean, that's fine. Sammy B's got another helo in the hangar. Oh, hang on a second. Noisemakers. Yes. We definitely didn't sink it, because if we had, it wouldn't be launching noisemakers now, would it? Now, they might decoy the Mark 46. But, I mean, if the submarine's been hit, it's going to be... I'm kind of surprised that we haven't actually picked up the submarine itself again. Instead, we're just getting the noisemakers. You'd imagine that if it had been hit, it would be a lot more noisy. Yeah, another noisemaker. Oh, this might be bad. We've lost contact on the submarine itself. All we're detecting is its noisemakers. If the Mark 46 goes pitbull though, by which I mean starts using its active sonar, it's not going to be fooled by the noisemakers, because the noisemakers only fool passive sonar. If it gets an active sonar contact on the Victor, you can see the noisemakers up ahead, and it has gone pitbull. Yep, it's hit something. It wasn't a noisemaker. So that Victor, whether it's a Victor 1 or a Victor 2, has just taken 2 Mark 46 torpedo hits. Oh, hang on. What? Oh, no, that's just another noisemaker. I thought that was another MiG-23 coming in. Extremely fast. No, it's just an imprecise passive sonar contact on another noisemaker. There's no way it's all the way over there. That's just the nature of passive sonar detection. So, did we get him? Because if not, I'm going to have to bring another helo over. And we haven't actually got contact on the submarine itself, which is kind of worrying. I mean, there's enough sonar boys around. What was it that Tom Clancy said? You could walk all the way to Iceland without getting your feet wet. I guess we just wait and see, because it's going to take a while to get this helo over here. And he's also maintaining radar contact on the 2 Nanuchkas while deploying more sonar boys of his own. We must have gotten it. Oh, hang on. Yes, we did. Alright. So there's no longer... Well, I'll say there's no longer a subsurface threat. There might be. But there's no longer a subsurface threat that we know about. So now it's just the surface threat, the 2 Nanuchkas. You know, which are no small threat, but I do have the advantage, because their SSN-9s have a 59 nautical mile range and my harpoons have a 65 nautical mile range, so it's not much of a window of advantage, but it's all I've got. The Sea Sprite's expended its munitions now, so I'm going to send it back to the Sammy B. I mean, it's still got some sonar boys, but if it finds anything it can't attack it. It's got no torpedoes left. So we're going to launch, because of course the Oliver Hazard Perry class of frigates carried 2 helicopters in the hangar. So we'll launch another one to take over patrol duties from the guy who just sank the Victor, while keeping an eye on those 2 Nanuchkas. And the second they get to within 65 nautical miles, we're going to give them the good news with the harpoons. There they are. They're evil little buggers. Also, do you see the launcher on the front, in front of the bridge? That's an SAN-4 Gecko surface-to-air missile launcher. They are not completely defenceless against harpoons. They also have a pair of 57mm dual-purpose guns. The Gecko is kind of short-ranged, but it's not bad. And this really could have been a lot worse, because this is set during the 1980s, which means that's a Nanuchka 1. So they're armed with the not particularly nice, but could have been a lot worse, SSN-9s, 6 of them. If that was a Nanuchka 3, it would have 16 SSN-25 switchblades, and they're still subsonic, which means that my SM-1 missiles again would stand a reasonable chance of intercepting them. But 16 of them, and they outrange the harpoon, so they could quite comfortably loiter outside of engagement range and just launch all, well, you know, 16 per Nanuchka, there's 2 of them, all 32 of those SSN-25s, and just overwhelm my missile defences. Fortunately, those nasty little buggers didn't come into service until 2005, so they're Nanuchka 1s, and I only have to worry about the SSN-9s. Because that's what the Soviets did, by the way. Overwhelm your missile defense. Well, they didn't do it, but that's what they would have done. If you've ever read Red Storm Rising, which I thoroughly recommend, and let's face it, if you're watching this video, you've probably read Red Storm Rising. But they knew exactly what the capabilities of our anti-missile defences were. Or if they didn't know exactly, they had a fairly good idea, and their tactic was just to overwhelm them. This is why Soviet ships just had so many missiles. Because it's not just a question of how many missiles you can put up in the air to defend against a wave of incoming missiles. There's a limit to the number of missiles that your radars can actually control at once. If you look at the British Type 42 destroyer, for example, which was designed in the 1960s and primarily designed to take down high-altitude Soviet Tu-95 Bear bombers, and it was very good at doing that. It had a dual-railed missile launcher at the front with 2 Sea Dart missiles loaded at any given time from a magazine underneath the launcher, and those missiles were controlled by a Type 909 radar. The ship had 2 of them, one forward and one aft. But what that meant was that the ship could only control 2 missiles at a time, which is fine when you're engaging Soviet Tu-95 Bear bombers 60 miles and 50,000 feet up. It's not that good when you're facing a wave of SSN-9s, up to 12 of them at once. You can only engage 2 at a time. American defences were the same. I don't actually know how many missiles, because let's face it, the Nox, with its Sea Sparrows, is basically only good at defending itself. The weight of defending the force is going to fall on the shoulders of the SAMI B here, and I don't know exactly how many different contacts it can track and engage at the same time. The Soviets probably had a better idea than I do, which is why they would launch waves of missiles. You know, if you could engage 2 missiles at once, they would launch 6. You might take out the first 2, you might not, but let's say you do. There's another 4 incoming. Now by the time you've engaged the first 2, you've already reloaded the launcher rails with a fresh pair of missiles and you're tracking the next 2 incoming. But they're now an awful lot closer, and if you do get the next 2, the 2 after that are probably going to get you, because you just can't engage that many targets at once. This is the reason why the US Navy developed the Aegis system. At first on the Ticonderoga class, a missile cruiser. Now I don't know exactly, because I'm sure it's classified, how many contacts a Ticonderoga class cruiser could track and engage at the same time. But I think it may have been at least as high as 70. And also through data link, they can actually take control of the missile systems of other ships in the force and control their air defences as well. I mean, it's an amazing system, but it needed to be. You've seen the amount of missiles that these Russian ships have, right? There's like a launcher tube on every available flat surface. You needed that kind of defense system if you were going to go up against the Russians. Okay, at least one of those Nanuchkas is now basically in range. And I have a 9 nautical mile window of opportunity to get him before he launches on me. It's not a lot, and the Harpoon is not a supersonic missile, so this is going to be close. The Oliver Hazard Perry's had a fairly adaptable missile launch system. That's a Harpoon, and yes, it launches them from the same launching rail as it launches its SM-1s. It can only launch 1 at a time though, it's only a single rail. And you can't really be launching Harpoons when you're trying to defend yourself from incoming missiles because they use the same launcher. So, yeah, I mean, you know, good side, bad side. And there goes another one. Now, I only have 8 of these in the magazine, and I've just launched 2. But, I mean, 8 should be enough to take care of 2 corvettes. Although, these guys do have chaff, which can fool a Harpoon. I mean, it's not likely, but it's possible. And they also have those SAM-4 Gecko surface-to-air missile launchers, and each Nanuchka carries 20 of those in its launcher. But again, they have the same restrictions, because there's a limit to exactly how many missiles you can control at the same time. I think they're limited to 2, although it's a fairly clever system, because each missile that they fire is controlled on a different radio band. to defeat electronic countermeasures, jamming, and that sort of thing. So it's a fairly nasty little system. The only real downside is the limited range. But it is a self-defense missile system. It doesn't have to have a 70-kilometer range. First harpoon's going in. It's a sea skimmer, 20 feet above the surface. It's just not that fast. It's fast enough. Hopefully it'll get there before these buggers within range to launch their own missiles. You can see smoke up ahead. That's the first Naruchka. Oh, there's another one over there to the left. In fact, that one's probably going to open up on me first. Yep. There go the 57mm guns. Here comes the flak. Some rate of fire on those things. There goes the chaff. Harpoon's gaining altitude. It's a top-down attack weapon system. Oh, taken out. They got it. Shit. That's not good. Where's my attack display? Here we go. Where's the next one? I launched 3, which is just as well because the first 2 got taken out. Come on, baby. I kind of wish I'd launched more than 3. Oh, it missed with an SAN-4. That one went too high. Here come the 57mm guns. It's going up for the top attack. Come on. Come on. No, they took it out. Oh, crap. I'm in trouble now. I mean, I can re-engage. I am going to re-engage, but I don't think I can actually intercept them now before they get to launch their own missiles. See, I was kind of worried this might happen, because I only carry 8 harpoons. I mean, kind of wish I'd launched all 8 now. But what if there's another surface threat? Then what am I going to use? Harsh language? I mean, I can use the SM-1 in surface engagement mode, but it's not very good at that. I didn't count on a pair of corvettes being able to defeat 3 incoming harpoons, but they did. So now I've got 5 harpoons left, and I'm using all of them. And I'm probably going to have to stand by to defend myself, because they are now pretty much guaranteed to be able to launch their own missiles in return. And that means that the second I have cleared the magazine of the remaining harpoons, I'm going to have to reload the SM-1s, and I'm also going to have to get the ship turned around, because the Oliver Hazard Perry class's Seawiz weapon system, you can see it there at the back on top of the hangar. It's no good to me back there if the front of the ship is pointing towards the incoming missiles, so we're going to have to maneuver the ship to clear the firing arcs of the Seawiz, and also get the 4-inch gun, which is weirdly enough not mounted at the front. That's where the missile system is. It's actually mounted midships. But we need to get every single defensive system unmasked and pointing in the direction of the incoming threat. And sure enough, there they are. Incoming missiles. Only 1 detected so far, but you can bet there's going to be more. Okay, the Sammy B has expended all of its harpoons. The boy nester here is, well, he's got sea sparrows and that's it. So she's just going to have to take care of herself, assuming the Sammy B cannot intercept these incoming missiles with its SM-1s. And there they go. So that's 2 missiles in the air against that incoming track. Is she going to launch any more, or is 2 the maximum she can control? First one's missed. It looks like she can control 2 at a time. Second one's missed. Ah, shit. Oh, this isn't good. Okay. She's now turning. I mean, I've given her an order to turn to starboard in order to unmask the Seawiz. Shit, the third one missed. That thing's getting awfully close. There's another SM-1 on the way. Got it. Only the 1 missile. Yeah, I don't believe that for a second. They basically passed the harpoons in flight. The harpoons aren't even at the targets yet. There's going to be more. Let's see how the harpoons are doing. 5 harpoons this time to take out 2 targets. I just pray there's no more surface threat. Or we're in. Well, yeah. We'll cross that bridge when we come to it. Okay, it's managed to defeat the missile defenses. This is looking good. Yes, got him. Well, I mean, he's hit. He's probably sinking, but he's still firing the 57mm rear turret. Here it comes. Second harpoon closing in. The other harpoons are going for the other target. Looks like his missile launcher's out, and his gun just stopped firing. Oh, it's gone for the chaff. He decoyed it. Alright. Well, I'm hoping that the damage he's taken is enough to sink him, because I'm out of harpoons. 2 remaining it's sunk him. Okay, he's gone down. Good stuff. 2 remaining harpoons going for the final Nanuchka. There goes the chaff. Here come the 57mm guns. I'm not seeing an SAN-8 launch. Oh wait, no, I think I did. Yeah, it's missed. It went high. Harpoon's going up for the top-down attack. Come on, baby. That doesn't look... That looks... Yeah, that's a hit. And that's it. Destroyed. Mission complete. Ooh. I was worried I was going to have to sail all the way to Narvik. But it turns out the mission counts as complete either when you get one of your 2 merchantmen to Narvik, or you just eliminate all potential threats. So that's 4 MiG-23s, 1 Victor-class submarine, and 2 Nanuchka-class missile corvettes. That's not a bad day's work, and we didn't take a single hit in return. That was the Gauntlet scenario in sea power, naval combat, and the missile age. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you maybe learned something from it. And as always, take care, and I'll catch you next time.